A very good morning to everyone. I am Nilendu Bala, presently pursuing Master of Planning from SAPL University of Calgary. Today I will be presenting to you the case study of East Kolkata wetlands, which is a Ramsar site and is gradually being destroyed due to the construction malpractices. This entire study has been conducted during the pre-pandemic times and focuses on the perils of rapid unregulated urbanization. So where is Kolkata? It is one of the largest metropolis located on the eastern part of India, very near to the Bay of Bengal. The main objectives of this research is to briefly go through the history and current status of the wetlands, the effect of housing development on the wetlands, and the approval processes using the loopholes in the existing policies. To discuss the formation of the East Calcutta wetlands, we have to introspect into the formation of the city of Calcutta itself. In 1600s, there was a series of villages dotting the river Ganga in the southern part of Bengal. As the British East India Company landed on the shores of Bengal in 1700s, they amalgamated the villages and hamlets to form the city of Calcutta. Calcutta went on to become the capital of British India till 1911. Construction of lock gates to prevent tidal flow into the river, as well as the changing course of river Ganga, led to the formation of the saltwater marshes to the east of the city. During 1850s, the Dhapa Lock Gate was constructed to counteract the tidal flooding in the wetlands. Meanwhile, the city of Calcutta started expanding towards the wetlands and also deposit wastewater from the city into the wetlands. This eventually changed the nature of the water from saline to brackish. By 1900s, wastewater fishing and farming had started in the wetlands. The wetlands had become an integral part of the city, and after independence, to accommodate the rising population, first wetland reclamation project was launched. The East Calcutta wetlands became internationally protected Ramsar site in 2002. But by then, the damage was already done. The city surrounded the wetlands on all the sides with fringes being developed on the reclaimed lands. The Ramsar Treaty is an intergovernmental treaty that provides the framework for national action and international cooperation for the conservation and wise use of wetlands and the resources. The East Calcutta wetlands is one of the largest remedial wetland system of the world, maintained entirely by the local communities. In 2018, the wetland received approximately 1,000 million liters of wastewater per day from Calcutta and produced 18,000 tons of fish per year and nearly 150 tons of vegetables daily. The boundary of the Ramsar site intersects the city boundary. The city fabric has spilled over into the protected areas of the wetland. The three areas have been identified for analysis. Two of the sites are located in the area falling under both Calcutta Municipal Corporation and the Ramsar, while one site is purely in the Ramsar area. As we proceed further, I would like to draw your attention to the classification of the wetlands in legal terms in West Bengal. According to the Calcutta High Court, wetlands are defined in terms of being wet for 6 months or more in a year. Whereas the West Bengal Town and Country Planning Act of 1979 says filling up of water bodies bigger than 20 kathas or 0.14 hectare without the permission of local bodies is prohibited. The West Bengal Inland Fisheries Bill of 1993 says that any water bodies exceeding 5 kathas or 0.035 hectare cannot be filled up. So how does this sustainable century-old wise use of wetlands work? The untreated wastewater from the city is pumped into the wetlands via a series of open canal systems. When the sewage arrives in the series of interconnected shallow fish ponds, it is allowed to strand in the sun, letting the bacteria and algae work the magic on the sewage and convert the waste into useful fish feed. The synergistic growth of bacteria and algae in turn is boosted by the nutrients in the wastewater. The low submerged lands are also used for agriculture and farming. This unique art of turning waste into food wealth has been mastered by the natives and the knowledge has been passed down through generations. This yield of fish from wetlands is 2 to 4-fold more than the volume achieved through the normal ponds. Since two of the site areas are in Ward 108 of Kolkata Municipal Corporation, which also partly falls under the Ramsar site, a comparative timeline study of the ward has been done to figure out the loss of wetlands in the ward over a decade. The mapping of water bodies of Ward 108 in 2005 shows that more than 53% of the area is covered in water bodies, with built-up area consisting of only 7% of the total area. The mapping of water bodies of Ward 108 in 2019 shows a major decline in the area of water bodies to only 40% of the total ward area, with built-up area doubling up to 15% of the total area. From slums to planned areas, several encroachments have cropped up all over the ward in both Ramsar and non-Ramsar area of the site. The red marked area on the map denotes the loss of the wetlands by land infills. There has been a steady decrease of water bodies from 600 hectares to 445 hectares with a 8% increase in the built-up area, but the vacant area has also increased considerably from 450 hectares to 108 hectares. Now we will look into the different methods of wetland conversion, how the wetlands are getting infilled and encroached by residential and other types of land uses. There are two types of slums in India. One is a government notified slum and the other one is a non-notified slum. Our first site is a non-notified slum. Dhapa, a locality on the eastern fringe of Calcutta, consists of landfill sites where solid waste of the city of Calcutta are dumped. Initially, Dhapa comprised of wetlands and canals. In 1980s, gradually as the city expanded, it needed dumping grounds for solid wastes. Hence, in 1990s, Dhapa was designed as the city dumping ground, and by 2005, Dhapa had become a full-fledged city dumping ground. Presently, in 2019, it is spread over 60 acres in the Ramsar site, polluting the entire ecosystem. It is the home to one of the most poorest sections of urban population of the state of West Bengal. They have incomes as low as rupees 500 or $6 per month. Most of the people there are dependent upon the dumping ground for their livelihood. Makeshift shelters, ever-burning toxic fumes due to the heavy methane buildup in the dump yard, unregulated recycling units plague the site, leading to severe environmental as well as human life degradation. The slum has temporary structures made out of plastic sheets, mud, concrete. It does not have any proper toilet facilities also. All the human waste directly gets dumped into the wetlands. Pollution from the cremation ground, effluent and methane from the dump yard, coupled with severe substance abuse, has led to very low life expectancy of the population dwelling in the slums. The government also has turned a blind eye towards the residents of the slum as they do not account for votes in the elections. Our second site is also a slum, but since this is a government notified or recognized slum, this now has turned into a permanent settlement. Now we'll move over to our second case study area, which is a Chobaga slum. This is a 102-acre area and initially had 4 large water bodies based on which the area was named. The parcel of land is located to the east of the city in the wetlands in the Ramsar area. The land belonged to a zamindar or a feudal landlord and was used to cultivate paddy and sewage-fed fisheries in the earlier times. By 1960s, the state government had vested the land and taken it over after the abolition of the zamindari or feudal landlord system. But the owners challenged the move in 1970s in the Calcutta High Court. A single bench of Calcutta High Court had ruled in favor of the petitioners. Before that order could be challenged by the government, the owners sold the land to a real estate developer. However, in March 2016, a division bench of the Calcutta High Court ruled in favor of the government, but by then the alleged squatters had taken over major parts of the lands, football fields had sprouted up in the stretches of farmland and fisheries were gone. Due to vote bank politics, the squatters were given pattas. Now pattas were temporary rights to the vested land given to the farmers, but it did not bestow ownership. In 2017, frequent clashes happened between the government and the squatters. The occupants of the plots, who claimed to have been living there for 3 decades, refused to vacate the land, leading to total degradation of the land. Earlier during 2002, approximately 40% of the household of this area was dependent on agriculture. 48% of the household were dependent on pisciculture, while the rest of the 17% were dependent on other industries for their livelihood. But in 2019, the total number of households increased, and of them 300 households were dependent on agriculture. That is 86%, while the rest were dependent on pisciculture and other industries. This drastic shift from traditional vocations is largely due to several factors affecting the productivity of the fisheries. The adverse factors included no dredging, decline in supply of sewage from the city, increase of harmful chemicals affecting the production of the fishes, and of course poaching. There are different types of dwelling units in this slum. The major typology present here are the single-story houses. They have an approximate area of 160 square foot and is a semi-pakka in nature. Its cooking area is outside the dwelling unit and it houses an average of 3 persons per household. Mixed use dwelling units has an approximate area of 250 square foot and is semi-pakka in nature. Its front area overlooks the roadside and is usually converted into a shop, like a grocery shop or an eatery. It has an average of 2 to 3 persons per household. Courtyard type dwelling unit has an approximate area of 1000 square foot and is semi-pakka in nature. It has a central courtyard with 5 to 6 rooms surrounding it and has an average of 10 persons per household. The affluent families in the slums can afford this type of dwelling units and is generally used by joint families. Even though they are government notified slums, they lack proper infrastructure. The untreated sewer is directly dumped into the wetlands, leading to contamination of the water in the wetlands. The same water sometimes is used for household works and sometimes also as drinking water. There are problems of drinking water supply also, and it is very irregular due to the absence of proper water supply system. Majority of the water bodies have been filled up to create land for new unauthorized housing developments due to the growing demand and increasing population in the area. All the landfills and developments are illegal as the land belongs to the government and the vacant land is being used up by the slums. Moreover, due to the proximity from the city, there is an increasing trend in the conversion of the wetlands here. In the recent times, plastic recycling, leather processing units are coming up all around the main road, which in turn is polluting the entire ecosystem of the area with their untreated effluent discharges. The third site is in the Ramsar area and it showcases the illegal occupation of the wetlands by exploiting the loopholes in the policy. The site of Bhagwanpur was selected due to its proximity to the city. The site having a common boundary with the Calcutta Municipal Corporation made it a lucrative option for the developers and also made it easier for us to understand the development procedures in the areas out of the city limits. A comparison of census data from 2001 and 2011 shows a four-fold increase in the number of houses in the area and population density. Satellite imagery has revealed how water bodies in the area have shrunk by 77% in the past 17 years, despite being under the protective legislation and having the status of a Ramsar site. The site, which in 2002 was 88% water body, became 80% land by 2019. This rapid shrinkage is due to the land sharks rampantly filling up the water bodies to create a 304 hectare cluster of habitation. When East Kolkata wetland was declared a Ramsar site in 2002, as much as 88% of the land in this area was partly or completely underwater for most of the year. This supported a thriving fishing community, but 37 out of 47 large water bodies where fish were reared in this area have been filled in between 1996 and 2016. Over a period of 14 years, the land cover has gradually changed for residential use, a drastic shift by infilling the water bodies. People in this area mainly have revisional settlement dalil or patta, which is a temporary land document. Such temporary land documents were given out as mostly the families were refugees post 1972 Bangladesh Liberation War. These areas outside the city limits have their own jurisdiction which is known as Panchayat. In the panchayat area, the construction approvals are quite different from that of the municipal areas. It varies from panchayat to panchayat, and due to the ambiguity, the norms are being exploited and construction approvals are done without much of an hindrance. One of the three methods of wetland conversion is the legal method using the policy loophole. At the very starting, I had mentioned that according to the West Bengal Inland Fisheries Bill 1993, any water body exceeding 5 kathas cannot be filled up. Moreover, up to ground plus 2-floor construction, permission of the village head is the only requirement. Hence, individuals construct legally 2-floor buildings in plots less than 5 kathas. The second method of wetland conversion is through illegal methods which can be self-implemented. Usually, the owner of the plots does not even bother to take necessary permissions to get construction approvals due to the complex process involving government offices. They opt for illegal methods to get the approvals. The landowners at first go for land filling and then approach the block land revenue officer to appeal that the plot was used as agricultural land locally, which is known as Sali Jami, which in turn can be easily converted to residential land use, which is locally known as Vastu Jami. For this, necessary land conversion charges and other charges had to be paid. This is the most common tactics used by individuals to convert the wetlands into residential lands. Another common method undertaken by individuals is by changing the parcha, which is the original land document in the panchayat office. But the shortcoming of this process is that it entirely depends upon the size of the plot. That is, land under 6 kathas can only be changed via this procedure. Local people slowly fill up the wetlands which come under their parcel of land to avoid getting in tussle with the wetland officials. They partly infill the wetland, keeping a little bit of water body on their plot before selling it off in lieu of a lucrative amount. People with good political ties simply landfill water bodies by draining out the water and dumping construction rubble overnight. According to the Calcutta High Court, wetlands are defined in terms of being wet for 6 months or more in a year. This policy is widely exploited for the conversion of larger parcel of lands by the land mafia. One of the illegal methods implemented for large-scale conversion of wetlands by the land mafia is the following one. The land mafia sell plots by draining off the wetlands and starting a eye-wash cabbage cultivation just to show that the plots are agricultural land or sali jami. They later convert it to residential land before selling it off. A client is shown around vacant plots for a registration fee of 200 to 500 Indian rupees. Once the client selects a plot, 50% of the money has to be paid in advance in cash. The rest is to be paid after registration. The real estate developers who operate in these areas have in-house people who develop the low-lying lands, get the building plan sanctioned, and undertake the construction. And the client necessarily has to take the services of these people only. For every transaction, the seller makes 60% and the remaining 40% is split between the local stakeholders. These are some of the varied methods of converting the wetlands to residential plots, which are duly exploited. All these data were gathered by me in 2017 when I had visited the area disguised as a prospective customer. The pictures from the site reiterates how rapidly the entire landscape is changing. This is a legal document of land use change from agricultural to residential land use in the wetlands. In a list prepared in 1997, there were 264 fully functional and 12 partly functional bheris or wetlands mapped in the East Kolkata wetlands. In 2014, a census was carried out by the late ecologist Dhrubajyoti Ghosh, who could establish only 202 bheris. There was no trace of 62 bheris or wetlands, and many more wetlands were gradually getting filled up. Thank you for your time and consideration, and hope this research work gives you an insight into the present condition of one of the largest wetland system of the world. Thank you.